can you start a live stream and give us a signal? Okay, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to the last day of the deep dive days from the TUM.ai Makeathon. I'm your host, Petar Petrov, and today we have quite an interesting workshop planned for you, and then followed by a business talk. Before we get started with the workshop, I would like to thank our sponsors, Applied AI, Unternehmertum, TUM Venture Labs, and Microsoft. And I would also like to remind all of the participants for tomorrow that the official Makeathon starts at 11 a.m. However, there is a ceremony at 10 a.m. There's going to be a live stream where we explain everything in detail. So it's quite crucial for you to be there so you do not miss anything. Okay, I think we can start with the workshop, and today's workshop is by etventure and it's hosted by Alexander Kluk and Philipp Zorner. Philipp is the junior project manager and Alexander is the senior project manager at etventure. They're going to give us a workshop on that topic, from your idea to a digital business model. And would like to say good evening and welcome to Alexander and Philip.
Thank you. Yes, and now we will take over. So the workshop, as you said, is from your idea to a digital business model. So bring that particular on the spot, that how to pitch that idea, and not only to prototype nice and feasible products. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a short overview about the agenda. So first of all, I will give you a quick introduction about EY Adventure, so who we are, and then about the methodology, which is personas, interviews, customer journey, ideation, prototyping, testing, business modeling, and the go-to-market strategy. And in the end, I will give you a quick overview about the pitch, how to do a good pitch. So who are we, or who is EY Adventure? So my name is, as you heard, Alexander Klug. I'm a senior project manager at EY Adventure. And actually, I'm had kind of 5 years into consulting, always in the fields of innovation and digitalization. And my experience is as an entrepreneur and as a consultant to build corporate ventures from an idea to a digital business solution. And I'm usually focusing on the user experience and user perspective and bring user centricity into the projects. And I'm also an expert in the business modeling side. So I like that part as well a lot. I have a broad experience around a variety of industries, and also included DAX companies here from Germany, but as well some smaller and medium companies. So I will hand over to Philip.
Yes, hello everyone. Also a warm welcome from my side. I'm Philip. I'm currently a junior project manager at etventure. I just recently joined the company after finishing my master's degree, and as a junior project manager, I also work on really bringing in the user perspective in all our projects and make them the center of what we do, and focusing on the development of new ventures. So far to my side.
Thank you, Philip. So who is EY Adventure? We are an entrepreneurial partner for executing digital transformation and innovation. And here you see the team from last year, from our team event, or I think it was the year before, because last year was Corona. So we are doing a lot of events, and there you see we are a lot of people there. And we do product tests, we are entrepreneurs, we have digitalization projects, we are startups which we build, and we have innovation units we are building, and we have about 10 years of experience in digital consulting. So what are we focusing at the moment? We have kind of a focus, but we have also kind of other fields of interest, but we focus on corporate venturing. But at all, we are doing execution, enabling, and building ecosystems or strategy for corporates, usually to build startups or corporate ventures. So here you can see our key assets, or one of our key assets is an ecosystem, and there you see a lot of corporates which we are working with. We have further networks, and we as well are working together with startups, and this is kind of our home turf, and we like to bring that along to our projects to bring companies and corporates together with startups. So we have a team of 250 digital experts and entrepreneurs, from venture manager to project manager, designers, user researchers, design thinkers, product data scientists, so a lot of variety. And this is what we also live into our projects, that we have a variety of roles and skills into our project teams. We have 450 years of combined startup experience and about 40 plus employees who are founders. So a lot of founder experience as well. And what we are thinking of always when we are into projects, and this is kind of our approach, we want to build MVPs, minimum viable products. And what is an MVP? Here in that field, you can see this Swiss Army knife. And you see the first one, which has a lot of features, which can do a lot of things, but it's kind of heavy and not usable maybe for the army. And on the right side, you see, which is like on the core functionalities, like a bottle opener and a knife. So this is a minimum viable product, to bring it to the core features which are necessary and essential, and not building products or services which are a lot of features, which have a lot of features. So this is kind of our approach to bring this in the projects. What did we did so far? We are doing a lot of tests as well, as you should do in your hackathon, like online and offline tests. Here you see a variety of products. We built digital products like apps in the past, or landing pages, services around that. So this is just a quick glimpse over that. What is our framework? To just give you a short introduction into that. So we have 3 phases which we are usually structure our projects. It usually starts with an ecosystem analysis and a strategy for 8 until 12 weeks. Then we have the second phase, which is the market validation, traction building, about a couple of months. And then we have the phase 3, which is like 6 until 25 months. And so this is how we build startups, like from the scratch, building up a strategy, but bringing it to a scaling business model. This is how a typical project plan looks at our project. Like first 2 months, like discover, do an ideation, identify a market potential, and then come to the problem identification. The second phase of prototyping, testing, and business modeling brings us to the problem solution fit within kind of 3 to 4 months. And then we have all the times the iteration cycles, and then from the months from the 6 to 12, you have this MVP building and scale up phase. I just showed this to you because this is what you are going to do in the hackathon with a couple of days through that. But as we are doing this in a couple of months, usually with our clients. About the methodology. So this is why you're here. So this is what you can use when you're going into that hackathon. So what you should take with you out of this workshop. First of all, finding the product market fit, which is really essential for you. I mean, you have a lot of ideas, you have a lot of feasible and technical background to build nice and fancy products. But first of all, you should think about what is the user experience, what is the design around that, and do you have the business, or do you get the business goals which the user wants to have. So the user here in that particular picture wants to go straight to the street, but the designer thinks, okay, there must be a fence in between that. So think of the user and what the user experienced that. And this is the main thing you should focus on when you build new products or services. What does that mean? So where do we start and where do we want to get? First of all, it's kind of a fluffy field. You don't know you're going into the right direction or into the wrong direction. Usually people are thinking, okay, I have a straight idea for a good product and then let's do it. And you're focusing 2 days on building up that product. But this you should consider is maybe not the right way. Maybe you should first of all think what is kind of the user needs, what does he want, and go back and forth and try to try out several tests before getting into that focus phase where you can straight ahead build your product. So usually it starts a little bit fluffy, but then goes kind of straight. What does that mean for us? we have 5 key assumption types. So the first assumption type is there are users that are interested in solving the address problem. Second, there are channels to reach those users. Third, the user are willing to pay money, attraction, time, etc. And fourth, it is possible to build a digital solution. And then 5, the product is scalable. So you see, fourth is it is possible to build a digital solution. And we also at Adventure.ai have a pyramid. So what is the classical way, which usually our clients and usually investors look around? Is this business scalable? What is your technical solution? What do they want to pay about that? Okay, how you reach the user? And then they are thinking maybe about the problem and solution. But from a user-centered design or user perspective, you first consider what is the problem and do the users are looking for a solution? Then are we able to reach the users with our channels, our product? Where do we find the users? Are they willing to pay anything for that service or that product? And then is it technical feasible? And then is the business scalable? I think the technical feasible is the most interesting part as well for me as a German guy and from industrial engineering. I would love to build kind of fancy product with a lot of features, but maybe ask yourself, what is the real problem which a user has and are they looking for a solution, and then build on top of that. You can go to the first steps of the pyramid very fast and come to the technical feasibility, but you should always consider that for a good pitch in front of an investor. Around that, what methods do we base our methodology on? First of all, usually it's design thinking. So very fuzzy start to be more concrete and empathize with the user, then be more abstract, define what could be a solution, make an ideation. Then as the methodology Lean Startups says to us, make tests, a lot of experiments and maybe pivot. And then even learn around your tests, build new tests and pivot again. And then if you are quite sure what the solution should look like, then you can go into the agile project or product development. And there you should build like technical things. So to avoid to build maybe a couple of hours, some technical feasibility things. But first of all, think, is this really necessary to build on top of that? First, design thinking, Lean Startup, Agile. This is based on Gartner, so this is not from our knowledge, but this is kind of the typical process you're going through and always iterate on that behalf. If you combine that both, you see, first of all, in the beginning, it's very fuzzy. This is the design thinking part. Then it comes more clear in the Lean Startup part where you do a lot of tests. And then the agile product development should be at the end. So take your time for the first 2 steps, then you are faster in the end, instead of building a lot of features and then find out that no users cares about that features. So you see, first of all, uncertainty high and high ambiguity, and then the certainty and the high confidence comes at the end. We have kind of working materials which we will provide you in the end of this session. We have kind of templates which helps us to structure our process. We have the persona template. We have the value proposition canvas, we have an idea canvas, and we have as well a business model canvas. And to go into that deeper and to explain how the canvases are, I maybe now hand over to Philip and yeah.
Yes, thank you, Alex. So as you just said, you now gave this quick introduction on how you should approach a problem and to start thinking of the users, and we're now really gonna dive a little bit deeper on concrete tools and techniques you can apply to find this problem solution fit. And the first one's gonna be personas. So what is a persona? Well, a persona represents fictional people based on your knowledge of real users. So it's really important to think of this, even though this is going to be a fictional person, it should always be connected to experience you have, to real experience, to people you could meet on the street. They are a hypothesis, and it really describes the social and demographic characteristics as well as own wishes, needs, habits, and yeah, cultural characteristics as well. So We just learned what is a persona, but we should really ask the question, why should we build personas? Well, first of all, personas can help you to synthesize the data you have. They help you bring together interview results in a descriptive way. The second point is they can really serve as an orientation for making decisions. And it can be really important also for investors to make decisions, because through personas, they can better understand who your target audience is going to be. The third point is personas can serve as a starting point. They can help you to formulate concrete problem statements from the specific point of view of a persona. And the fourth one, and in my opinion, one of the most important points here, is they create empathy. They make it easier for you to put yourself in the shoes of the user. They help you to see with their eyes and their problems they might be having. So to now really create those personas, we will give you a template which will help you to set up this persona. And on the next slide, we're now going to dive a little bit deeper on what this template is going to look like. So when we start on the top left, there you can really insert just a scribble of the persona you identified. On the top right, you will put in some context to this scribble, such as the profession, the age, the lifestyle, the place of residency, the family, the hobbies, the values. So there's really no right or wrong here. Put in whatever you think is necessary to really find out or to really make this persona come to life. In the row below, you can see needs and pain points. This is going to be very important for the ideation phase later on. So on the needs side, you will put in, okay, what does this persona want to achieve? What does he or she wish for? And when we look at the pain points, that's really the opposite. It's really like, okay, what frustrates him or her? Where is he or she stuck? What's the problem they might be experiencing in the journey they are going through? And last but not least, we have the point of view, and this point of view really describes the situation the persona currently is in. So yeah, we started with the personas, but to really like make them come to life, they should, and we talked about they should be based on reality. We also suggest to conduct interviews, and that's what we're now gonna take a deeper look at. So why should we do interviews in the first place? Why should we be user-centered? Well, successful innovations, which I'm sure all of you want to build in the Makeathon this weekend, solve real problems from real people. So we really have to put us out in reality to solve those problems. And usually the problems we work at are barely our own. We rarely experience them ourselves, especially, for example, if you consider a B2B environment, for example, there it can really help. And also, these interviews help us to really get a deep understanding of the motivations, of the needs and the problems of the people we are developing for our users. So we highly encourage you to conduct interviews before you start building your solutions. What kind of interviews can you do? So there are three main interview categories you can kind of do. First one being explorative interviews. Here you ask for concrete experiences, for feelings, thoughts and contradictions. The second one is doing an observation. The difference here is you don't influence this interview. You really just lay back and are in the observer's perspective and try to catch as much as possible. And the third one is to put yourself in the situation of the user, really immerse yourself in the situation. And if you might be thinking, okay, well, these pictures look really funny, they are actually based on our colleagues, because that's something we do at, I think, almost every project we do that we conduct the interviews. It's always the first step to really put yourself out in the reality you want to develop a solution for. If you do those interviews, there are a few things you need to watch out for. First of all, be prepared. We're going to talk about this step in a second a little bit more. Second, collect information. And when we mean collect information, really just collect it. Do not interpret it yet. It's important not to influence it with your opinion, and really just write it down. So the third one goes a little bit hand in hand with this. Ask open and neutral questions. The fifth one is the why. So I think there's this saying that you always say, okay, you should ask why 5 times, really in order to get to the bottom of the problem. Because when you first listen to the problem a user might be describing, this really might not be the root cause, just a symptom he or she is experiencing. Next step being ask for concrete situations the user base their problems, their experiences on. Allow silence. I know this is always very difficult because I think it's very natural that we don't want to have silence in conversations, but really concentrate on doing that in the interviews as well. Do not help with suggestions. Try to not influence the user, really just give them the stage to talk. And of course, also don't only listen to their words, and this is the last point, also pay attention to nonverbal signals and look for contradictions. So I just said, be prepared. One thing we highly suggest is to do a guideline for these exploratory interviews. This is also, I think we also attach this for you, which you can quickly create before you do an interview. So you should always look at, okay, how do we introduce ourselves to the user, to the person we might be interviewing? Which topic are we focusing on? Who we want to interview, and then based on the hypothesis you developed earlier, really formulate at least like 5 questions you want to find out and start with this guideline into an interview process. So to wrap this a little bit up, we do these interviews to really get from the data there might be at the beginning, really to the knowledge and really find out, okay, what really is out there in reality. In the end, it's always important to synthesize your insights. So what we do is, okay, during the interview, we just write everything down, do not interpret, but then later on, we now synthesize all these writings into those categories, as you can see it here, in the needs and the gains, the pains, the customer jobs, and also outstanding quotes. And I think outstanding quotes is also something you can really use in your pitches at the end, for example, when you present, okay, what users have been telling you. Exactly. So that was kind of, okay, how to do interviews. And I just showed you one method on how you can synthesize them. Another one could be a customer journey, and we're gonna take a brief look at what a customer journey could look like. This is also a way to synthesize your insights just by really mapping out the process kind of the user takes from having a problem at the beginning to finding the solution. You always start with the swim line, is what they call it, and with the activities a user goes through. Really think about, okay, which level do I need? Which level of detail do I need here to later on develop my solution? It really depends on how concrete you want to build things, or your solution already is on the level of detail you want to achieve in the activities. And then when you look at the columns below, this helps you to further analyze the different activities. For example, you can look at the feelings a user has doing a certain activity, the experience he or she has, the expectations he or she has at that stage, or also really dive deeper and say, okay, what data is needed at that stage and further on. So you can really adapt this to your purpose as much as you want.
So then I take over again to the ideation part, but thank you, Philip, for that part. So now we conducted interviews, we gathered information from the user perspective, we figured out what are the problems maybe, and what kind of situation is our customer, and who is even our customer, a user. And now we have to come up with a solution. And the idea generation is kind of generating and then come to a synthesis. So which kind of idea you're going further with. But first of all, the generation is kind of an open part where you think of a lot of ideas, a lot of solutions, and then later on you come to the synthesis. So usually we start when we begin an ideation with the how might we question. So what is the how might we question? If I would ask you to design a vase, what pops up to your mind? So usually this is a straightforward question, very close and not open. And maybe you think of kind of that solution. So these are beautiful vases, kind of on the right one, a fancy one, and more innovative one. But this is not kind of a solution we are looking for. So if I give you another question, how to integrate plants into an apartment. So this is kind of a more open question. And now maybe you see even the difference between the first question and this question. People are thinking in answers to question. So this helps people to how to integrate plants into an apartment to come up with a creative mind. And this could be more kind of solutions, what you think of. So now you see it's more innovative, more thinking outside the box, more thinking beyond. And this is what we're looking for. So find a good how might we question to start your ideation. How could you formulate a good question? There are different verbs you can use, like how might we help, how might we support, how might we draw attention, convince, experience, ensure, show, enable, etc. On the right side, you see kind of there's a persona, and how can we help this persona to do anything, to make something better, to show, to ensure. And this is kind of the syntax what you're using when you're building up how might we question. So the customer problem or need is identified in interviews, which you did before, and rephrase it into a positive question. How can we, the target, the customer, the user, help to solve his problem? And there you can exchange the help to ensure or what else you come up with. And come up with a lot of how might we questions. There's not one question you could answer. You could bring up a lot of questions and maybe vote in your team which how might we question you think is the best one to be more creative. And then answer the question. This is where the ideation part comes into that. Which we are usually or often say is quantity before quality. As I said before, this is an open part. So think about a lot of ideas, think beyond, think about more, make maybe one ideation round, a second ideation round, use different ideation methods and come up with a lot of ideas and don't judge them. So this is not about be precise on that idea. Maybe it's just somebody reads a newspaper during a train ride because the train ride is so long. So this could be an ideation like, okay, this is just a newspaper for this solution. So come up with quantity, not qualities, and then maybe go to the next idea. And which I want to even give you a hint is think 10x and not 10%. For example, here in this case, and we took Google, not how can we improve driving, better would be how can we replace driving completely. So you see, this is kind of another trick to bring you in another different ideation part. So maybe think beyond, think what would be like not the 10%, the next best feature, the next best thing, but think about, okay, when we think more gigantic, like Elon Musk, like Steve Jobs, so what would he do instead of that? So there are different methods, and I even thought about my talk, bring you more into that methods, but I thought maybe it's up for you to choose the right methods. And I gave you some names of methods, and you can look them up. I think there are so many articles in the internet how to do that. For example, the reverse brainstorming. This is kind of you thinking about an opposite. So not how can you maybe replace driving, but how can you make it more boring, more like, not suitable for urban people to use cars for driving. And then you think about the opposite thing. So how can you make it more better? Or even the star brainstorming. So what would be like a superstar like Elon Musk, like Tesla, like Steve Jobs do in that kind of a situation when he comes to that. And as well, there are a lot of more. For example, hot potato is like a short ideation round where you throw up in like a potato to people and say, okay, what is the first thing which pops into your mind to solve this problem? There are a lot of ones. Crazy 8 is one as well, which I can refer, which is quite easy and look it up. But there are so a lot of ideas, and sometimes it's only silent or quiet brainstorming you should do in the first to come up to bring out the ideas you already had in mind to solve this problem. And then if you have a lot of ideas, what should you do? You need to narrow it down to one of the best ideas. But it's quite hard to find the best idea. And how we usually do it in prioritization is based on usually 3 criteria, which we use in the beginning, because usually ideas are not that maybe well explained. Maybe like if somebody challenges you, then you don't have an answer to any question. So we have this 3 criteria. Is it desirability, or is the desirability there in that idea? Is it feasible? And does the idea has a wow effect? And as well, you can think of kind of, is it as well viable? So is there a business impact? But usually we adjust them on that 3, because usually the viable part comes when you have a good solution. It comes by itself, and you need to think about numbers and figures, but usually people want that. So desirability, you add some numbers to your ideas. So how strong is the added value for the customer, and when you judge your idea? 1, put a 1 up, no strong added value, or put up a 5, a very strong added value. Even you can choose between like 2, 3, or 4 to maybe sort your ideas. Maybe you start with the not the strongest added value idea and think about what is the idea which has the strongest value, and then prioritize every other idea between that. As well, the feasibility part. So how complex is the implementation? Very time consuming or a little effort? So can you do it by now, like in a couple of seconds to come up with that solution? Or do you need kind of bring up new technologies? You are at the AI hackathon, though. Is it kind of different, and do we need more data? So is it even like feasible to do it in this given amount of time? And then the third part is the wow effect. So we want to have cool ideas. And when you think of the first 2 criteria, they're more like, okay, you can jump it, but is it pretty cool? So give it like a veto for an idea, or push an idea. So 1, the idea will become commodity in the future. This is kind of not pretty like innovative. Or is this idea new? I've never heard of it. It would be great to implement that. So put up a 5 on that. So at the end, you have a lot of ideas, and you have a kind of a lot of numbers there, and then pick out numbers which are highly ranked. Like here in that case, maybe like a 15, or even you bring up this viability part. Does it add value, any money to, or brings it any money to your company? So then you have kind of sort your ideas. So the next thing which you then think of when you come up with an idea is, what is the value proposition of your idea? And you see here on the right side, we have the customer who loves to see the product, and you came up with a solution for your product. And then if this fits your idea, then your customer goes and buys and loves and uses your product. But how can we get there? So we have here another canvas for you, which helps you to narrow it down what your idea could be. On the right side, you see the customer. And when you do interviews, you had this criteria like customer jobs, pains, gains. So what is this, what the user or the customer wants to do? Like, I have an example on the next page. So here we have this taxi driver. So what is like a customer wants to do? He wants to find a taxi. He wants to call a taxi. He wants to give directions, as he wants to pay as a taxi user. So what are his pains here? Wait a long time, compete with other customers, is overcharged per taxi driver and an unsafe driver. So he has a lot of pains and problems and challenges with that service. And what has he? Some gains? Maybe he desires something. So this could be an easy payment, arriving on time, for price, professional. So not kind of features, but he has some kind of needs he wants to have during that experience. And go back to that. On the left side, you have your product. So on the left side, the product and service is described, and your product and service has features. And the features you can divide into pain relievers and gain creators. So must-have features, and maybe nice to have, but not really necessary, but pretty cool to have that. And that kind of example here, this is the taxi smartphone app, which kind of you know, like maybe for example Uber, you know, and this pain relievers is an instant booking, assigned driver, cost system, no cash, but as well has some game creators because you can choose between professional and semi-professional drivers. You have a rating system, you save time, and you have a visual map where you see where you come along. And when you kind of have your customer on the right side with all the pains and gains and as well customer reps, and you think of your idea and maybe the best 3 ideas and bring up this value proposition up like, okay, this is the idea. What kind of features do we need to bring up here for the customer to solve his problems, and what kind of features we can bring to make the product even better? Then you have the fit of your of the solution. Of the problem of the customer, and then you can maybe draw some arrows, and it's not even might that you figure out or have a solution for every pain, but you should solve even most of the pain. If it's not, if like your solution is pretty cool, but you don't solve any problem of your customer, then it might give you a hint to rethink about your solution and maybe choose another solution, because what you figured out about the customer, maybe then he's not using it. And this is kind of a good thing to double check if your solution fits to the user needs. And then if you are kind of thinking of the pitch, then you need kind of a value proposition. And a good statement is to here to use like this as well template. We help our target group, our customers, to narrow it down to give his problem or unmentioned need kind of a solution by providing our product and service which will be delivered. So if you fill out that gaps with your target group, the problem of the target group, and the providing of your product and service which you want to deliver, then it helps to clearly understand what is you're going to about, whom you're addressing, by what, why, and by what. And this helps even the investors to understand what are you thinking of kind of a solution. Prototyping, yes. So it comes all to a part where you think about your solution in the Makeathon. So there are different types of prototypes which you can test in the first phase. So here you see 2 examples. The first one is like to build anything feasible, physical, and the first one is like only a plastic bag, then a plastic bag by divided into different segments, and then to have this real kind of fancy product which you can show to your customer. But even this is our kind of different steps in between. And for example, a digital product which we usually test, first of all, we have kind of a scribble where we just bring up some ideas, some benefits, some features of the product and test it with the user. And when we got feedback, we iterate, and then we go to maybe to the next stage and think about kind of a landing page or a more fancy scribble or a visual design. What could it be? And then the last part is then bring the real service to life and then test it under real conditions. What is a benefit scribble? And I would highly recommend you in the first not to go directly to your computer and program anything, maybe just to draw and scribble some ideas and test this first of all with the users. We have here 2 examples, like the benefit scribble, which gives you to help to know your persona, formulate a value proposition, and you just need a piece of paper and a pen. And the structure is like the main visual, what is it about, what you want to bring here up, the interesting headline. So here we identified your spare parts for you, and then formulate 3 value main advantages, like this is fast and easy, this is clear of identification, this is less of cost. So gives this first test users kind of an idea what you're talking about, even with you not have anything feasible yet, but get feedback. Second one is like the process scribble. So think of understanding the persona's user journey. We heard from Philip that you should think about where in which part, what the situation is, what the personas lives through when he goes through a process or a service at the moment. And then what is your process and how you could give the better customer journey here. And then you have as well a main headline. Maybe you define 3 until 5 steps which your persona goes through and uses your product or your service. So what can he expect? What does he needs to do? And create maybe a visualization for each step. This is even even not any program thing, but gives you kind of a clue where you maybe iterate another step or maybe bring a more clear explanation to that process. And by the end, then it comes to an idea canvas. So if you're kind of sure which kind of ideas you have tested out with customers, maybe you have 3 or 5 ideas tested with scribbles and ask the users about feedback, then you can bring up the idea canvas, come up with a slogan or a name of your idea, maybe a description, maybe sentence. Then who's the persona or the target group who the idea is aiming at. So you have before that, think of the persona canvas, so just maybe copy and paste what is your target group about. And maybe it's even iterated there. Then what is the pain points and the point of view which you address? So this is kind of very important point here at this stage, because are you really focused on pain points on the user-centric part, or is there maybe not a pain point and then you have to rethink? What is the concept idea on the left downside here? So what is the idea about? Maybe give a brief sentence about what is the idea about. And there was 3 most important features. How does the idea works? So kind we have seen before, like maybe clearly less of course, or maybe functionalities like he has a VR thing which he can use, or maybe he has a chatbot which he can communicate with. And what is your value proposition? Why is it a good idea? Why you should do that? When it comes to testing, and I know all of you know how testing is in a product world, but I will give you a quick glimpse what we understand under testing and what we do when we test our product. Usually when you go out, I showed you the scribbles, I showed you the benefits, scribble, and even then you go further and you build something technical, and you always should do it kind of in pairs or with the whole team. And when you do user testing, you should maybe consider 4 aspects. What went well? What do we need to improve? Open questions and new ideas. All usually we are doing silently. So nobody explains the user what he sees, what he needs to do, what he has to think of. We always ask the testing user, okay, please think out loud. Please speak to us what you think of that solution, of that functionality, of that button. So do you understand that? What went well? So is it a good part? Do you understand clearly? Is the user direct to the call to action button or not? And as well, what do we need to improve? Kind of, are there things we need to make better, or what you see in an immersion, like when you see that somebody don't see the button because it's not highlighted yet, or even there's maybe not a corner around that, then we need to improve that. Open questions. Usually users are asking people, okay, what should I do here? Do I need to scroll? Do I need to do that? What is that meant by? Write these questions down, because this helps you to make your, for example, UX design or your product more understandable. And new ideas, sometimes it happens that a user says, oh, cool, it would be nice to have here a map, or it would be nice here to see this or that. Write that down and improve your product or service on that. Business modeling, kind of the most important part for investors, but not maybe your scope, what you like to do. And this is kind of for us the last part. So if you have gathered all the informations around your product, all the informations about your service, you have kind of a good solution which the users like, then you need to think of your business model. And you have created before the value proposition canvas. So this is kind of, you have done a part of it as already. So the user segment is already filled out and the value proposition segment is filled out. But there are a lot of more aspects you should consider in your business model. Here we provide you as well with that template, and this is usually our business model canvas, which we're doing at our company when we come up with a new solution. So the first part is analogical markets, which analog markets with regards to the needs of the customer and or the technologies used to target market, even from a completely different industry, exists there anything. So can you maybe see some parallels to your kind of service, your idea, which you can see in another market, and you can come up with that idea. Do we see competition here? What are the most important direct and indirect competitors in the target market? So where you are thinking of kind of your customer, maybe you have to compete with anything. Like, for instance, we have this example with the Uber app. Here in Germany, we have kind of several other apps who compete with Uber, and maybe as well in your country, there are as well some alternatives to Uber. So what are competitors? Direct, kind of using the same target group with kind of maybe a similar product, or maybe indirect competitors, maybe from a completely different market, or maybe you target a group from a different angle and try to catch them into a market which is already filled out. Then we usually start on the right side here with the canvas, so the customer segment, to whom you're creating value with your offering. So this is the first thing of what you think of. And the second one is, as you already did, is the value proposition. So what is the solution we can provide with? Then you now can think about the pyramid we showed you before. How can we reach the user? So do we have channels in which way we want to interact and reach our users? Do we need marketing? Do we need online marketing, offline marketing? Do we need kind of have social media campaigns? Do we need to talk with our customer in kind of a stationary thing? Then the next thing you should consider is the customer relationship. So what kind of relationship do you have with the users? What do you need to build to that, to maintain it, and to expand the relationship? Like when you think of kind of KPIs or something like that later on, it would be good to create a high customer lifetime value, so that you have your customer not once and he buys your product or uses your service once and is never seen again. So it would be great to maybe have the service again and again. So what is kind of a customer relationship to maybe bring the customer interested in your service again and again? Then usually when we have these 4 compartments, we switch over to the left side. So what are the key activities we are usually doing? So what do we need to perform to fulfill the customer benefits, to the activities which are necessary to for the channel? So what is the core activities you need to do? Maybe build an algorithm, maybe having the customer touch point in that. So think of that, activities you need to do. And then the next thing is the key source. So what are your resources? On what resources is your value proposition built? So what resources do you need? Do you need distribution channels? Do you need customer relationship, revenue streams? So what is kind of the most narrowed down things you need to have for your service? And then we have key partners. Maybe you have kind of partners which you can collaborate with. For example, with Uber, maybe go to some fairs or something like that and say, okay, maybe let's do a cooperation. We bring your users to the fair, and the fair we can pick up then later on. Think of kind of other banks or I don't know what else you can think of partners which could help you to maybe reach the user, to build a better customer relationship, or maybe even to reach even better the sources, or even to maybe fulfill as well kind of a need in the customer segment for a partner which you can't think of yet. When we thought of these parts, I think it's kind of heavy. Then we come to the bottom part, and now it depends whether you first think of a cost structure, so kind of what you need for think of to pay for, like IT infrastructure, employees, people, activities, I don't know, what are the cost drivers? And maybe you focus on the 3 main parts. You can consider of everything when you have within your team, but later on you should maybe point out who are the 3 most cost drivers. And then the next part is revenue model. So what kind of revenue models you can think of? If you type in different business models, there are a lot of business model patterns we have around there, kind of pay-per-use, or have a freemium app. So there are a lot of revenue models you can think of. You should first think of what should you monetize, and then think of how can you monetize that and kind of doing it feasible. What is the cost driver here? What is the user interested in and would always pay again and again, ideally for that? Think of the revenue model. And then as we are a startup, think of MVP production. So what do you need to build your MVP in the next phase? And even what you should consider is marketing and sales, which is usually by digital products or services, kind of pretty much important. How you think of that. We provide you with this canvas later on, so you should, or we recommend you to fill it out to give you kind of a clue where to think of what could be an investor be interested in, and maybe have this in a backup. But now go-to-market strategy is the almost last part. So when you thought about your business model, your idea, maybe what is feasible, what you can build off, you even should think about, okay, what would be the next step further? An investor is not interested maybe to buy your company at this state, but he maybe buys your vision. And so this is kind of a technique to think about selling more than you have today, like in 3 horizons we usually do. And the 3 horizons have this axis like impact. We want to have more impact later on, and even about the time. So we had this little amount of time, but think of when we have more time, what we can do. And this is kind of as well like a scaling path. So horizon 1 could be like, what is the first step that can be done today? This is the MVP. So what did we have done here within that Makeathon within a couple of days? And look at this, what target group you can reach. But then think as well of the disruptive vision. Maybe you have an idea like thought about 10x and thought about this most craziest idea, which has the most wow effect. And you want to build that. And maybe you narrow it down, like what would be the first part to make it feasible and bring it to life. And then, but you can even sell the vision like, okay, this is where we want to get. This is what we need to get along that road to come there. But we have this vision, and we don't think about what we can do today, and not about thinking about tomorrow. Yeah, think in these 3 steps: horizon 1, horizon 2, horizon 3, and maybe put up a timeline, like maybe in this 2 days, maybe in 3 months, maybe in 3 years, so that you have kind of a clue where you think of and what is your ambition. And then to the last part, and maybe the most interesting part for you, the pitch. So what makes a good pitch? And as I heard, you have about 3 minutes to bring your pitch. This is kind of an elevator pitch. You did a lot of research before, you did a lot of templates, thought about your idea, and now you have to narrow it down in 3 minutes. This is kind of the toughest part which you need to do. And there is kind of a little tool or a little help which you can use to narrow it down into 3 minutes. It's the situation, complication, question, and answer module. So first of all, you should explain the situation. Who is your customer? Why does he have a problem? And what kind of situation is he when he has his problem? So this is the situation. The complication, okay, why is this a problem? Kind of maybe he doesn't has the right technology, or he doesn't have the right service. So what is exactly what the complication is about? What have you understood of that? Then it pops up the question for the users and even for the investors. So, okay, we have all this kind of problems. So why is there this complication? What could be a solution? And then you bring the answer. So the first situation, complicating, and question is like get the attention of the audience and create a common base of understanding. You need to bring that part together to get that the investor get an idea what you're talking about, who you're talking about. Make it as easy as possible. You would explain it to a baby, like, I mean, if it's even straight ahead, the problem in front of you and everybody has heard of it, but narrow it down. Who is the user? What kind of situation is he? What is the complication? What's the question? And then the answer is your solution. Bring up the key statement. What is it kind of the value proposition you have? What is your product or service? Maybe give a short picture of that, and then even maybe explain the most free benefits or functionalities of your product. But even think about maybe 3 and not get to be more complicated. And this is your key statement where you can pitch your idea. Usually the investors have a couple of questions, and maybe you address them in the pitch when you have your talk, but maybe later on there's as well kind of questions they can come up with. And here are some of the most common tips and tricks for the storytelling. So what to consider: know your target group, stay authentic, define what you want to achieve with your story. Do not push your product above your story, and put not your product above your story. Do not copy other companies, and focus on the essentials. So what could be the checklist? What can we do, and what can we do better than others? What do we not offer? So maybe even differentiate yourself from other ones. What problems, needs does the target group has or have? Who do we solve the problem need? Who can embody the problem solver, hero of the story? What is the company's most important message, brand, value, claim, etc.? So good design can as well help to have a good marketing or have a good storytelling. How does the target audience understand what we want to say? How do we reach the target group? What format does the target group prefer to consume? What is the overall goal, and what is the goal of the storytelling campaign, realistic and measurable? And as I said before, design could be as well like a good part. There's as well a part which I not addressed here in that part, but I give you this kind of small story from my latest pitch where we came to our client, and this is the name of your idea. So we had a kind of a small workshop to come up with a good name. And I mean, even if the idea was not quite good and maybe not feasible in the next couple of years, but what our client remembered was the name. And the name of our product was Swagon. You won't find that. This is kind of a new idea, a new solution, but this is kind of where they remember the name. So it could be even as well like have a good name as well for a good marketing campaign to bring that up. So don't leave that out, to have a good branding visualizations on that. Yes, so this is what we gave to you, and I'm pretty interested now in the Q&A session. If you're interested to stay in touch with us, then you can see here down there, this is like the QR code to reach us to get our credentials like mail, name, and even the phone number from my side. And if you're interested into Philip, I will give you as well the QR code now. Here you have this QR code from Philip. So if you want to reach him as well, give a heads up, maybe write a mail, then we can stay in touch. But this is from our side what we want to give you, and we will provide you with our templates and canvases right after this talk. Thank you.
And thank you very much for this amazing talk. Now we can move forward to the Q&A session. So dear viewers or participants, you can ask all your questions in channel number 2, workshops and talk. I think we can wait a minute or two if they have any questions. And in the meantime, I have prepared a question or two while we wait. First question is to Philip. You talked about the information data collecting process, so the interviews, etc. And you also mentioned that if we somehow interpret the data or like modify it, you mentioned that we should never do that. Do you think that it has a huge impact on the outcome, or how does it play out in the future if we do something like that?
That's a pretty good question. So I really stress on this point because, as we said, it's important that we solve real problems. And when we look in the past, before all these methodologies were out there to put the user really in the middle of all you do, sometimes you could see companies building solutions, coming up with products which were great by themselves, but which wouldn't sell. And most often the root cause of this is that they build a product, but there was no problem in the first place. And they just thought there was a problem. They kind of, in their vision, they came up with an idea that could be solved and which they could do, and which probably they could also leverage their strength on by creating the solution. But if we want to build sustainable solutions, which the user really wants, we have to watch out to not put in our opinion too much into what's out there in reality. So to really keep this reality as raw as possible, to really understand the problem as the user says it right away, and not kind of write down how we think the problem is, but really how the user explains it to us.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that amazing answer. We have received a comment in the channel. The QR code was not readable from the slides. Perhaps can you zoom it in or somehow make it bigger?
I try to, but I don't believe I will provide them afterwards, like send over the QR codes.
Yes, perfect. We have received a question. For the Makeathon, it will be difficult to interview people, specifically if the challenge is related to a specific field. What do you suggest to do instead?
I mean, this is always a question which we as well get from our clients. So we don't have users. What should we do? I mean, first of all, you can think of family and friends, and maybe there is in your personal universe somebody who has kind of experience with that problem you want to solve. If you don't have any clue which you where you can get some kind of users, sometimes it helps to go out of the street to ask them, or maybe to reach out via LinkedIn, some people to ask them, or even do kind of a Facebook. Maybe you know somebody, like come up with a creative solution. And if you don't have kind of the chance to ask real users, then you might should switch to another challenge, because or to another solution, because if you don't can interview real users, then you might build up a product which is not user-centered and not maybe asked by the market. And somebody, always we figured out, anybody knows somebody in that particular field.
Mm-hmm.
And also don't stress yourself too much with this. I mean, when we do this, and as Alex said, we do this over like maybe a 12-month cycle, like a whole project. And of course, also when we do interviews, we do maybe around 30 interviews. Of course, this is not going to be possible, but based on experience, we can really say that really starting from the first interview, you might discover some aspects you didn't think about. And even if you just manage to make one or two, and they don't have to be super long, I guarantee you that it will enhance your understanding of the problem you're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm. And as we said before, maybe it's as well like a good option to observe them, find evidence for that problem. Maybe you have videos, maybe you have pictures of that, what kind of problem that everybody can see and clearly understand that this is kind of a real problem out in the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have received another question. Can you share a concrete example of a startup that followed the steps you listed?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know out there how many startups this is, but for example, like giving attention, for example, as I mentioned, Uber before, what did they in the first place when they tested out their solution? They hadn't any driver yet, they hadn't any customers yet. They had this idea of coming up with a solution. So they printed out flyers, cards, and throw them around like this was a taxi flyer, I think, and throw it around New York. So do you want to have kind of a ride? Immediately call this number. And then they sat in the back with the phone number and just talked to so many people who were interested in like to have immediately like a taxi or a ride there. And so they figured out and made the first testing without any product, any functionality yet. From our perspective, a startup, so we built up as well some startups which we can think of. This is my job, I think, and as well we have when you Google Klöckner IT, then we build up kind of a platform for one customer. This customer was into steel, and they sold steel and the old and classic way, bought steel, put up some new things and sold it. And this was kind of, he has this problem in Germany to sell it by a good price point. So they figured out, okay, what the users wants to need, what should be built around that. And then we came up in the end with a solution with a lot of iteration after that, that they want to have a platform where they can sell recycled steel, and they can become one of the largest now platform offer to sell recycled steel in Germany, and they switched their whole business model to that new one. So I can give you a lot of more examples for testing, but maybe you can reach me more tomorrow in the expert meeting to go on further.
Sounds great. I'm just going to check the channel for a bit. Perhaps another question would be, what are some common mistakes that beginners make when giving a pitch? Or like some tips that you would like to give, like some backhand tips?
Yes, I mean, this is always like not be too fast and go briefly over that important things over. And I think if you follow or you keep in mind the situation, complication, question and answer, this should help you. I mean, usually people are focusing on technical feasibility, explain what functionalities, what features do they have, but didn't focus on who is the customer and does he has a problem. So the investor is like, okay, this is like kind of the nicest product I've ever seen, but who do we want to sell this to? Or even think about what we are usually or what we are facing usually is when we present numbers like we have a billion of revenues and something like that. This is kind of where you're not at this moment. You can think about numbers later on. Maybe you can give a quick glimpse about the market size or something like that. But this is not kind of the part where you have like real strong numbers with real customer experience. So you shouldn't focus maybe not to there on the on numbers, maybe more on really what is the problem, what is your user, what is his problem, and what is the solution you can offer and give him. This is kind of what I would give you as an advice.
Perfect, thank you very much. I think we have covered all the questions in the channel. Thank you very much for your amazing talk. Would you like to add something before we go to a break?
No, not at all, but we are looking forward. Tomorrow I will be here as an expert from, I think, 12 to 4 p.m. So if you have any questions and so on, please reach out to me. We will give you the templates all around that. And I would even, the last advice which I could give you, maybe take your time, maybe half a day as well, to go through all these steps, because in the long run it will help you instead of immediately start programming, developing. Usually we see that with the iteration process, it's better if you start from the user perspective instead of go directly to the solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That has been Philip and Alexander from EY Adventure with their workshop on creating a business plan. Thank you very much, guys. Right now we are going to do a short break, I think till 8:30. So it's going to be a 20-minute break, and after that we are going to do have a business talk from Dr. Chan Naseeb from IBM Data and AI on the topic of responsible computing. And we will see each other again at 8:30 p.m. Thank you very much. Bye, guys.
So, ich denke, wir sind nicht mehr live.
Oben links in der Ecke steht's noch. Aber
Dann gehen wir mal raus, ich rufe dich an.
bis gleich.